So we're looking at the Sichas, volume 23, the Sicha for Shevuos. And the Rebbe says a fascinating thing, that by Shevuos is a tremendous emphasis on enjoying physical food as an expression of the Simcha and on the Tainug, the pleasure of the Yontif, more so than the other Yom Tovim of Pesach and Sukkot. This is expressed in the fact that in the Gemara there's a debate regarding the other Yontifs. If you really have to enjoy physical pleasure, or you could just enjoy it by davening and learning. This is based on two verses in the Torah where it speaks about Yontif. The term is used atzeres, which basically means Yontif. Hold back, stay away from your regular mundane activity. So there's two verses. One verse says atzeres la Hashem Elokecha. This should be atzeres, a celebration for Hashem. Another verse says atzeres tio lachem. This should be a celebration for you. So one opinion is you have a choice. You could either get away from your mundane life by completely dedicating the day to Hashem with Torah and learning and davening. And the other option is that if you want, you can enjoy yourself and change your monotony of your daily life by enjoying meals and eating and drinking. You have a choice. And that's why these two verses. The other opinion, which just becomes the halacha, that no, you just split the difference. There's two verses because it's telling you're supposed to spend half your time with Hashem and half your time with you. Chatzil Hashem, chatzil lachem. Shevuos, everybody agrees, though, that there needs to be an element of physical pleasure for you. Even the minority opinion, the dissenting opinion, which says, like all the yontifs, you can pick one or the other. On Shevuos, everybody agrees it's got to be partially for you as well, which is interesting. So Shevuos is supposed to be enjoyed physically, more so than every other yontif. And this is brought home further by the fact that on every other yontif, Pesach and Sukkot, I assume this goes to Rosh Hashanah too. Although it's a mitzvah to have pleasure with eating and drinking, if you're in a situation where you actually have more pleasure by not eating and drinking, as for an example, you had a bad dream, which, especially back in the day, was considered a bad omen, and by this is talking about a dream which you didn't think about during the day and it just showed up and you're taking it as a bad sign. So there's a concept of fasting to remove the negativity. By other yontifs, you're allowed to do it. Shevuos, no. And the Rebbe says, why? Why does Shevuos stand out with the emphasis that you must enjoy this holiday with eating and drinking, whereas all the other yontifs, which also they're required to have pleasure with eating and drinking, nevertheless, there is an exception. If you want to fast for a tainis Shalom, for a dream, you are allowed to. Shevuos, you're not allowed to. So Shevuos is more about eating and drinking than all the other yontifs. The Rebbe says this is counterintuitive. The other yontifs are actually commemorating physical things. Salvation of the Jewish people from Egypt, from slavery, salvation of the Jewish people in the desert, protecting them. You're talking about physical salvations. Shevuos is nominally completely a spiritual thing. We got the Torah. And yet on that spiritual day, we must emphasize it by eating and drinking. It's completely counterintuitive. This is the Rebbe's type of question. The Rebbe will explain it by first prefacing a general thing. Why is it that this eating and drinking is such a big deal? Not just by Shevuos, by all the yontifs. There's a lot of ways to have pleasure, including refraining from eating. The guy had a bad dream, or the guy's on a diet. The Rebbe doesn't give that example, but the Rebbe gives the example: the guy eating and drinking is unhealthy for him, makes him feel bad, etc. Why do we make such a big deal about eating and drinking in Yontif in general? Not just about Shevuos and in general. To the point that even if on the other Yontifs, Pesach and Sukkot, you took the excuse that you had a Shalom, you had a bad dream, and therefore you're doing a fast and that it's allowed, you need to do tshuva for violating the mitzvah of eating on Yontif. Halacha says we're going to let you fast, let's call it on Sukkot, because you had a bad dream. So you're taking pleasure from not eating. You still need to make up for it on another day and fast as teshuva for violating the yontif. The Rebbe says, I don't understand. The mitzvah is not to eat. The mitzvah is to have pleasure. For the bad dream guy, the pleasure is not to eat. So he has to do teshuva for doing that. We allow him to fast, but he's got to make up for it. The bottom line is we see clearly that by all yontifs, the main emphasis at the end of the day comes down to eating and drinking. Why? Why? The guy has pleasure from not eating. Maybe eating makes him feel bad because of a bad dream. Or it could be a person who's not eating because of tshuva. And therefore, doing that gives him pleasure. Or it doesn't feel good when he eats. It doesn't make him feel good. Why the emphasis on food? So the Rebbe deals with the second question. All right, so where are we so far? Question one was, why does Shevuos stand out? And you absolutely must eat and drink, and you can't even decide to fast of a Shalom, of a bad dream. Which Shevuos should be most spiritual? To deal with that, the Rebbe first steps back and says, by all Pesach, Shevuos, and Sukkot, all Yom Tovs, the food and drink is the main central way of doing the pleasure. And even though there's an allowance to fast, if you had a bad dream, or I guess otherwise, you still have to fast another day for tikkun, for tshuva, for the fact that you broke the Yom Tov, they didn't eat and drink. Why is eating and drinking so central to all Yom Tovs? So the Rebbe says, because remember, the whole idea of Yiddishkeit and of our mission here on earth is to bring heaven down to earth, to bring Hashem to the physical. If Yom Tov is the idea of joy and of pleasure, it means that the pleasure that I feel because of Hashem's presence, because of the miracles, what have you, is so great that it permeates the physical. Because that's why we're here. We're here for the body. The whole idea is the language is that the Torah was given to purify the person. The mission of the soul on earth is to purify what? The body. The soul doesn't need purification. The soul gets elevated by the fact that it elevates the body. But the mission is about the physicality, about the body, this coarse body, physical, and make him elevated and refined. And therefore, since the mitzvah Yom Tov is to feel the pleasure of the Simcha, that Hashem did all this stuff, and He loves us and everything else, and therefore I feel it in pleasure. What is a natural pleasure of the body? Eating and drinking. If you're feeling pleasure by not eating and drinking, because one of the aforementioned, either you had this bad dream, so psychologically you're feeling better, or you're doing tshuva, or whatever. Today you could say you want to lose weight. This is all soul pleasure. It's not really body pleasure. But your soul is stronger than your body. So your soul, your mind, what have you, convinced your body to enjoy not eating because your soul is in charge. You're a person who's in control, and you don't want to eat because it's not because of the bad dream, because of tshuva, what have you. But at the end of the day, the body doesn't feel that pleasure. Body feels pleasure from yes eating. And that's why all the Yom Tovs, the emphasis is eating and drinking. Because the whole idea is that whatever Yom Tov stands for, which represents the simcha and the tainug and the pleasure of Hashem's closeness to us, has to come down to the body, because Yiddishkeit is all about the body. It's very simple and it's very profound, even as it's simple. The same way you say, how come we put on the mezuzah on a physical parchment and not meditate about it? Maybe somebody meditates and he feels the mezuzah more. But it's not, the idea is to touch down to the physical. There's no different in the mitzvah of pleasure of Yom Tov. It's got to be physical, bodily pleasure. Bodily pleasure is eating. Don't tell me you enjoy pleasure by not eating. That's the soul's pleasure. The mind, the soul has conquered and is control of the body and is convincing the body. It's like a person's on a diet. They're having pleasure. Yeah, sure. They're having pleasure mentally, that their mind is telling their body, you don't want to eat. And the body is, let's say the person's in control, the body is acquiescing, but it's not really bodily pleasure. And therefore, says the Rebbe, that's why every Yom Tov there's an emphasis on eating and drinking every Yom. Even in the case when there's an allowance of tainis Shalom, of the dream, you still got to do tshuva for it because you really didn't do the mitzvah. They just set it up. Says the Rebbe, why? Because the whole idea is that the body should have pleasure. So we answered the question number two, the question that the Rebbe prefaced in order to explain question one, why Shevuos stands out. For a second, also one more thought. I taught this class in my community here, and somebody asked a question. The Rebbe is asking, how come the emphasis on Yom Tov is eating and drinking, and you can't have the pleasure by fasting or by doing tshuva? But what about other pleasures? People have pleasures from other things. I take a walk in the park. I read a book. I go to visit the museum. I mean, let's assume that there's things that are kosher activities. He suggested music. I said, well, Jews don't listen to music on Yom Tov. But there's a lot of pleasures that people have in the world that is not just about eating and drinking. I think it's a fair question to ask that this could be part of the Rebbe's question. The Rebbe doesn't say it explicitly, but I think the answer would be the same. Let's assume I go to a botanical gardens and I mamish enjoy myself. It's not called the natural default pleasure of the body. The proof is a lot of people don't enjoy it. It's something you have to train yourself. It's not physical pleasure of the body. It's not the natural pleasure of the body. It's a pleasure of the higher elements of the person, the mind, the soul, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the smell, I don't know. And then, so you have trained yourself that this becomes your pleasure. The proof is that a lot of people don't have it. There's a common denominator. Every human being likes to eat. Everybody likes to eat, needs to eat. And that pleasure from eating, it's not something you got to train somebody. You're a day old and you have pleasure from eating. And therefore, eating represents that the body's having pleasure. Any other pleasure, art, music, reading, wisdom, relationships, these are wonderful, but these are developed pleasures. And in a sense, there's a partnership with the soul and the body in that pleasure. And that's not going to represent the concept that I've been saying that the yontif has permeated the body. The body should have pleasure, it's physical. Just like the mezuzah, it's got to be a piece of cloth. Can't be a combination of spiritual and physical. It's got to be physical. So this is how the Rebbe answers the concept of eating and drinking on Yontif is so important, whatever Yontif. But now the Rebbe says it comes back to Shevuos. Hang on. Says the Rebbe, says the Rebbe, based on this, the Rebbe is going to, in his signature style, explain that there's a powerful hint in the language that the sages use. The Rebbe takes the sages extraordinarily seriously. The Rebbe says, why is it that in the Gemara, and in the sages, the choice that's used, the example that's used, for somebody who doesn't want to eat on Yontif is a fast of a dream. And as we said, it's allowed on the other Yontif other than Shevuos. That's not the only example. If you look in halacha, there's other examples that are brought. Because there are other examples in reality. Some of them I mentioned earlier, tshuva, the guy can't eat because he's not feeling well. But in Gemara, the example that's used only exclusively is tainas chalom. Why? To the Rebbe, this is meaningful. The words of the Gemara, the words of our sages. There's a hint here, says the Rebbe. And that's hinting to the spiritual aspect of a dream. We know that the exile, the golus, is compared to a dream. We say it in the Shir HaMalas that we say after benching on Shabbos, before benching on Shabbos. B'shuv Hashem Meshiv Asiyon, when Mashiach comes, Hayidu K'cholmen. We're going to recognize that we were living in a dream. I think today we can understand this more than we could even a year ago. We're living in a dream. The whole thing is one big conflict. You know, the world is terrible. The world is great. My own avodah is Hashem. I feel very close to Hashem, and then I'm able to fall into physicality and etc. It's a dream. What is a dream? Opposites are possible because you're living with your imagination. So the Rebbe describes that a dream state. The Rebbe once said, I remember that when the dream, the first Egypt, the first Golus, Mitzrayim, which is the mother of all Golus, came about through a series of dreams, Pharaoh's dreams and Yosef's dreams. Why? Because that's what Golus is. It's a dream. It's a mix-mash. It's a mess. It all seems very vivid, but you don't know what's flying. It can be opposites. In a dream, you know, the elephant can go through the needle hole, perhaps. When Mashiach comes, we're going to say, oh my God, this whole thing was a dream. Meaning to say that opposites and things are not in order. And the Rebbe explains that there's a disconnect almost between the mind, the clarity, and the experience that the person is having, I guess, in their imagination. And this is a big subject in Torah and in Chassidus, and it affects the person's service of Hashem. They have contradictions within themselves. They're very inspired, and they also can be very uninspired, and this can happen within 5 minutes, as we all know well. Very refined and holy, and very unrefined and unholy, and that can happen within 5 minutes. So that's a dream state. So the Rebbe says that the fact that our Chachamim, our holy sages, whose every word is perfect, as the Rebbe emphasizes in his Torah, choose as an example somebody who can't eat on Yontif, they want to fast because they had a bad dream. The Rebbe says because that is symbolizing a dream state. They have an internal golus, and to such an extent that for whatever reason, they're not able to experience the pleasure of the great simcha of the Yontif in their physical flesh, which is said before, that's the plan. that the revelation of Hashem of Pesach and Sukkot and Shevuos and all these great things permeates the physical, that you push it, enjoy the food. And if a person's unable to do that, it's symbolizing, I guess, somehow that there's a disconnect spiritually. And that's why it's related to a dream. If you're unable to make that connection, there's a blockage. It could be that there's external reasons, that the guy had a dream and the guy is not in the mood. But the concept is the same. Now, once we understand that eating and drinking is a plus because it represents Elokus, the greatness of Hashem permeating the body, it's not happening with this person. For whatever reason, there's a dream, there's a disconnect, there's a blockage. Says the Rebbe, now we can understand why Shevuos is different. Shevuos stands alone. Unlike Pesach and Sukkot and Rosh Hashanah, there's no exceptions. You can never fast on Shevuos, even for a dream. Says the Rebbe, because Shevuos in a way is the greatest light of all Yantifs. It's a light of Hashem's essence, the true infinity. Because that's why the Torah was given. Where do we see Hashem's essence? The first word of Aseres HaDibros, Anochi, Anan, Avshi, Ksabis, Yahavis. It's an acronym. I myself have given and written myself down and given to you. Anochi. Anochi is beyond Elokecha, and beyond Hashem, beyond the finite name of God, and beyond the infinite name of God. It's the essence of God. That's what Shevuos, that's what Torah is great. That's what happened on Shevuos more so than the other Yantivs. The barrier was broken between heaven and earth. Vayedid Hashem al Har Sinai, and what came down, not godly energy, not even godly infinity, but the essence, so the Rebbe calls in this Sicha, true infinity. If the essence comes down, there's no way to block it. There's no dreams. There's nothing that will get in the way. It will permeate everywhere. As we saw by Matan Torah, that the message permeated everywhere. The Rebbe gives a few examples. The whole world stopped. The rivers stopped flowing. The birds stopped chirping. The cows stopped mooing. Everything stopped. Why would everything stop? The answer is normally when Hashem is revealed, not most people don't feel it. Only a Navi feels it. Tzaddikim, you have to be refined. I don't know. You have to be in the space where it's happening. Here, the revelation of Hashem was a true infinity. True infinity permeates everywhere. And therefore, the entire universe, I guess, stopped to function. Because it's infinite. It goes everywhere. It breaks through everything. And this is mirrored in the fact, says the Rebbe, unintended. This is echoed in the fact that there was no echo. It says by Matan Torah, there was no echo. If you go out into a desert and it's open, vast area and mountains, and you put a surround sound booming, that's what happened from all six sides. And there's no echo. Why? Why would Hashem make this miracle? The Rebbe says it here briefly, but it's explained in other sichas in detail. That because it represents a powerful thing. An echo means it pushes back. Nothing pushed back. That's what Matan Torah was about. The moment Hashem himself was revealed, it was obvious that the world is a sponge for it. The world receives it. And this was manifest even in the physicality, that there was no pushback. It goes everywhere. Just to crystallize it with a little example from a human being. There's three levels we said here, Matan Torah, right? Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Chassidus speaks about Elokecha is the finite light of God. Elokim begematria hatav. Elokim is the numerical of the word nature. That's the light of God within nature. Let's call it a finite light of God. Then you have Hashem, which is the infinite light of God, which causes miracles. Sobev kalalman, which causes miracles. And then there's the essence of Hashem, Anochi. It's not a name. I am what I am, the essence. And that's what the Rebbe, that's the true infinity. What's just a plain way of understanding this in the human experience? Not that we're God, but the verse says that from my flesh I could know God. We have within ourselves three types of things. These three. We have finite energies. The power to see, it's limited to the eye. The power to hear, it's to the ear. The power to feel and touch, it's the fingers. You can't touch with your eye and you can't hear with your fingers. The power to think is with the mind. The power to experience emotion, perhaps with the heart. Each one of these things are wonderful things, but they're finite specifications and individual things, and therefore they're individual. You could say the mind is so compelling. How come my foot doesn't understand it? Because it's a foot. Doesn't mean that you're stupid because you can't explain it to your foot. You're not stupid, you're just limited. You exist in a certain tier, and the same thing is with all the aforementioned specifics. This would be the human example, the human application, or parallel to the concept of Mamale Kalam, and the finite light of Hashem, the light of Elokim, the light that Hashem invests in nature. Then within the person you have what's called Ratzon, willpower. Willpower would be parallel or analogous to the infinite light, the Sobat Kalam. And where do you see that? Nothing gets in the way of will. You can do almost anything that's possible, I guess. You know, if a person is in danger, they can leap off a building. They can fit into a space where it's impossible to get into. They can lift up a car to save a child. As long as it's somehow humanly possible, I guess. Will is an infinite thing. Will is an infinite thing. But at the same time, sometimes there can be a blockage. In the language of the Sicha, dream state. Where can be a blockage to will? When a person's depressed, the person's uninspired, the person's confused. There is no feeling, a person's not well. And therefore, there's a blockage. Even this power of Ratzon, this power of will, which is so all-encompassing normally. At the same time, you know, when you will, when you dance, your whole person is experiencing the simcha. It's a concept of bleak will. It's a concept of infinity. Your whole person's involved. Yeah, but you haven't not in the mood of dancing. It could happen. You just don't feel inspired. You don't feel will. You don't feel simcha. It's not impossibility to fathom that. And that would represent the dream state. And therefore, on Pesach and Sukkot, which are miraculous days, Hashem revealed not just Elokim, but Yud Kei Vav Kei, the infinite, the miracle, Sovim, the miracles of Pesach and Sukkot. But if you have a Tainus Cholam, the guy has a dream, has a disconnect, he's capable of not feeling that inspiration. Just like a person can feel uninspired and he can feel a lack of will. Then there is the essence. The essence, to be plain about it, is the fact that I'm alive. This is not dependent on your mood. It's not dependent on your frame of mind, and it doesn't depend on which part of the body, the mind, the heart, the eyes, the ears. The entire person is alive from the minute you're born until 120, and equally, from the top of your head to the bottom of the toe. In my line of work, I've been in the presence of people whose soul left their bodies many times, such moments, and it happens in an instant, and it happens in the whole body. You could be looking at the hand or the foot, and you see that it's gone the same way if you look at the face. Because life is indivisible, life is essential. Just like the DNA is in every strand of hair and every toenail equally, and you can recreate that person with the cloning of the DNA. If you take that clone from the mind, from the brain, or you take it from a strand of hair or a toenail, it makes no difference. The essence is all encompassing, and there's no way to block it out. I'm having a bad day, I'm still alive. Fully. There's not more or less alive, you are alive. And that's an example of Shevuos. Hashem didn't just reveal Elokecha and Hashem, he revealed the essence of Hashem. It's not infinity. In the language of the Sicha, it's true infinity, which really means it's essence. And essence is everywhere, and it is everything. And therefore, the birds stop chirping. Why would birds stop chirping? They're spoiled from Elokos, they're impressed by divine presence. And the cows stopped mooing, and the water stopped flowing. The mountains didn't block the sound. These are inanimate objects. These are animals and birds. The answer is, what do you mean? Hashem is everything. This wasn't a revelation, a finite or even an infinite revelation. This was Hashem's essence. The whole world part of Hashem. Nothing can block it. And therefore, in our lives, this is expressed in the concept of Shevuos. That there's not going to be an allowance for a bad dream. Because nobody, no Jew will have that spiritual state of disconnect on Shevuos. It's so powerful, it's so all-encompassing, it's so permeating that you're not going to have a disconnect. You're not going to be in a state where not eating is going to give you pleasure. When Torah says you're supposed to eat and you're supposed to feel it in your flesh, you will. Even the same year who Pesach and Sukkot doesn't reach them, Shevuos does. It's very powerful. I read the Sicha and I taught the Sicha locally, and I said to my people, this is like Yom Kippur. When else do we speak about the concept that a Yid is touched in his essence? Yom Kippur, Achaz Bashana, the one day of the year, Yechida. So then I look at the footnote, and the Rebbe says that this is why Shevuos is one day biblically, Where Pesach and Sukkot are 7 days. 7 means the ishtalshalos, the whole system within the person. All the 7 emotions, it's a whole system. And similarly within Hashem. Yom Kippur, and the same thing, Shevuos, in terms of the festival, it's 1 day. Says that it mirrors this concept. It's a concept of oneness. It's a concept of essence, and therefore it reaches everywhere and touches everywhere. And therefore there isn't a concept of not eating. There needs to be eating and drinking and physical pleasure, because the infinity, the truth of Hashem, reaches a person in his flesh. It's very powerful. And there's no gullus. In a sense, there's no gullus on Shevuos. No gullus could block. No dream could block Shevuos. I want to just share a personal observation and takeaway from the Sicha for me. You know, if you're learning these Sichas, that means you're investing time in learning the Rebbe's Torah and the Rebbe's teachings. For us Chassidim, the gullus, for all Klal Yisrael, the gullus is very dark, and it's manifests doubly for us. We're coming on 30 years of Gimel Tammuz, and we need the Rebbe. Some people like to say we need the Rebbe more than ever. We always need the Rebbe. What does it mean for a chassid to live in a world who doesn't see the Rebbe? Obviously, we see the Rebbe is with us and all that good stuff. But in terms of our physical presence, it's a tremendous lack and tremendous sense of ghost and loneliness, perhaps. It's a dream state. A chassid without a Rebbe. It's a personal observation, but I think a lot of people can relate to it. It's like a dream. Some people miss the Rebbe. Some people don't even miss the Rebbe. They're not sure. They want to miss the Rebbe. Bottom line is, it's a confusion. We're Chassidim and we don't have our Rebbe. This is a dream. If there ever was one, it's a nightmare. What's the antidote? The antidote is we want Mashiach now. But in the meantime, if I'm living in the Rebbe's Torah, we know that the Rebbe Atzadeh gives us many things, but in his Torah he puts his essence. Because the language is tzaddikim dem lebedim, the righteous are exactly in the way of their creator. Just like Kaviyachal Hashem put himself in Torah, Ano nafshi kshavis yahavis anoichi, a Rebbe puts himself in Torah. This is something that says in 1,000 places, that Rebbe mentioned it many times. He puts himself in his Torah. You want to find that Rebbe? He's in his Torah. Here you are learning Project Lakota Sichas, and every week learning 2 Sichas and putting in time and effort and trying to understand the Nigla, the Chassidus, the application in Avodah. This is the best way to have a taste of beyond the dream. There's no dreams when you're living in the Rebbe's world of Torah. You have the essence, and when you have the essence of the Rebbe, because that's what he put in his Torah. What is the power of the essence? It touches every yid. I'm just paralyzing. I hope I'm not paralyzing the Sicha. I'm paralleling this to the concept that we talked earlier, just like with Hashem. Hashem is great and is infinity, but sometimes it doesn't reach the whole world. Sometimes it doesn't reach every person. He's in a dream state. But when Hashem's essence is revealed, it reaches every yid. And the whole world. The same thing is by Yidden and Chassidim and the Rebbe. The Rebbe is a great light, but it's very possible that we have days or moments or more than that where we feel disconnected. It's a dream. We don't feel the iskashus. We don't feel that we are part of that picture. It's not uncommon. People tell me, I go to the airline, I didn't feel anything. So why should we? We're plain people. Why should we feel? It's a lukus. However, one sure thing is that when you open up the Kutasichas, Anon Nafshik Savis Yavis, he put himself in it. It's the essence. The essence reaches every chassid, every yid. It's impossible that it won't reach us because it has that infinity, the true infinity of the Nasi Hador, and it gives us a sense of real Geula, of what Geula will be like. And in that space, there is no Gullus, there is no dream. In addition to the fact that it's also very Gishmak, physically. Okay. Afredach and Shevuos, and we want Mashiach now. Kabbalah Satera B'Simcha B'Pnimiyah.